Hi, I'm Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. Thank you so much for joining us for this SAG-AFTRA conversation at home with Netflix's Tigertail. Please join me in welcoming the film's writer-director, Alan Yang, and stars Tzi Ma and Christine Ko. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Nice to be here.
These are primarily geared towards actors, SAG actors. So I actually like to start by asking actors, how did you get your SAG card? What was the job that brought that special piece of paper to you?
Ty, you got to start us off with that one.
I did a film called Cocaine Cowboy. That's how I got my SAG card. And it was a jet set film with Jack Palance and Andy Warhol. It was shot on the Church Estates, which is where Andy Warhol lives in Montauk Point. And it's about this rock band that was smuggling cocaine into the country. So
Wait,
that's how I got my SAG card.
did you get to meet and work with Andy Warhol?
Oh yeah, we had a scene together. I should have had him sign my Campbell's soup can, man. I blew it. I'm telling you, he's cool. I love that guy, and he was kind of a neighbor because I used to live in New York, and I used to live in Soho, west of the Holland Tunnel. And he used to hang out at this bar right around the corner from me. So
That's so
yeah.
cool.
Wow. I
Christine, now you have to top that.
I absolutely cannot top that at all. I would say, so my first, my SAG job was this pilot called The Half of It. And it was a James Burrows directed multicam for CBS. And Mike Gibbons and Chris Harris were our showrunners. And that was my very first series reg. And I remember casting calling me and being like, you are a must join. And I was like, I don't have the money. So my manager lent it to me. And then I signed a contract saying that I would pay him back after I got paid for my pilot.
Wow. And did you pay him back?
Yes, I did. I really didn't want to, but yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you were joining, that was expensive.
Yeah, it was like $3,000.
I know. When I joined, I think it was just a couple of $100.
Yeah, but I will say, very worth it. SAG Healthcare is incredible.
Yes,
this is my ad for SAG Healthcare. SAG Dental is, you are all good. You are set once you join. So.
And Alan, what about you? What was your first job, or do you consider your first professional job as a writer?
No, this was my first thing. I've never done anything else. No. Miracle, they let me make this movie. I was going to say, my first job was a show called Heroin Heroes with Jean-Michel Basquiat in the 8. No. There's no way. We're never going to top Ty stories. We have nothing to compare to that. First real writing job was for a show called Last Call with Carson Daly, which was a talk show on at 1:30 in the morning. And I think I was 22 or 23 years old, but I was really lucky to get to write for that show. And we learned a lot because we had to do everything. A late night show typically has 15, 20 writers, and we had like 3. So we did all of the, writing, casting, producing, shooting, editing, all of that we did ourselves. So it was a fun first job.
That's like a good film school in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually want to start at the beginning with Alan, because obviously you've won an Emmy for writing on Master of None, and you've directed for that show and written and directed for The Good Place and Parks and Recreation. But this is your film directorial debut. What made you want to tell this story as a film, and how autobiographical is it?
I always wanted to write and direct a movie, aside from my television work. And when I started writing this script, it just felt like the perfect fit in so many ways. And it was the script that I cared the most about. It was the one I wanted to work on every day and think about all the time. It was just the one I was most passionate about. And, it took years. It took years and years while I worked on other shows and kept working on it kind of in the background and kind of honing it until it was in shape to shoot it. And as far as how autobiographical it is, it's definitely a mix. I think it's you take some of these anecdotes, you take some of the granular specific details that you can't sort of make up, the things that make real stories feel real, and then you take some of the emotional truth of the original story, something that is compelling and universal while being specific at the same time, And then you add a lot of your own imagination to it. I think it's very important, it wasn't for me at least, to leave a lot of space for imagination and leave enough room for creativity and invention on the day, not just from myself, but from the actors and from the people I work with, because a script is not a finished product. No one wants to read a script except for maybe aspiring screenwriters. People want to watch a movie. And a script is a plan. So you have the plan, you have it in hand, then you work with the actors who are the people that people actually want to watch, and then you talk to them and see how they can most sort of embody what you had in your mind. And so that's the collaboration that makes a movie. It's never just one person, obviously.
Did you sort of give your parents a heads up that you're working on this story? Did you
no, this is the first they're finding out. They're watching, they're actors, they're watching the SAG-AFTRA program, and they're finding out. No, I gave them a heads up and very early on. And I asked them questions and, you know, didn't sit them down with a tape recorder and grill them about their lives. It was more informally, a text, an email here and there, a conversation here and there. And, you know, I took a trip to Taiwan with my dad and learned so much from him and was inspired so much by not only what he told me, but how he behaved and how he reacted to being in his homeland again. And all of that sort of seeped into the movie, and all of that is part and parcel of what the movie ended up becoming.
And for the actors, how did this project find its way to you, and what interested you in these roles?
Daughter, go ahead.
Well, for me, it just came like any other audition. I got the email. It was really exciting because for me, it's so rare to have a character be written as a Taiwanese Chinese American. And so when I saw that, I mean, I was like, this happens once a year. So I'm 100% going to go audition for it. I had some personal stuff happen to me, so I didn't end up going to my first audition. And I kind of told my agents, I was like, look, you know, if it's there when I come back, then it's meant to be. And if not, you know, I will support whoever gets it. And it just worked out that 3 weeks later, they were still casting. And I was still kind of processing my emotions. I had just lost my father. And it was really nice. I guess my reps reached out to casting, and casting reached out to Alan and the producers at Macro and let them know about my situation. And they offered for me to sit down and talk to Alan and the producers. And so they thought, you know, maybe if he could tell me a little bit about his story and I could kind of explain what was going on with me, that, you know, we'd be able to understand this film a little bit more. And I don't know about you, Alan, but that was like therapy for me. I, for an hour, just cried my eyes out, and we really connected on the Asian American story and what it was like growing up. And so I thought after that meeting, how could I not audition for this beautiful film? And so I did, and that was it.
I mean, making a movie with like sort of a troubled father-daughter relationship and working through those issues at such a time, I think would be difficult under any circumstances. Was it sort of healing, or was it even more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, it was both. You know, I had to go through, I had to grieve while I was working. And in a way, it helps so much to be with such a supportive family. And the one thing I remember Alan telling me in that meeting was, you know, he was like, no matter what happens, if, you know, that you end up getting this job, I will 100% make sure that you feel protected. And if there's ever a moment where you feel like, you know, it's too much and you want to take a step back, that's fine. And that's exactly how I felt. And for me, I really felt that with Ty when we did our chemistry read. You know, we had met before on another project, and so I was so excited to work with him. And when we did the chemistry read, it was surreal in a way that the last time I had spoken to an older gentleman in Mandarin was my father. So when we did those scenes, when we improv scenes in Mandarin, I felt like I was talking to him again. And that somehow just dropped me into this authenticity of the film that I had never experienced. And so I remember leaving the chemistry read and calling my reps and being like, you know what, if nothing happens with this, that moment was everything for me. And yeah, I got lucky. I got the call like a month later. What about you, Ty?
Man, I didn't know all that was going on. Jeez. Oh, nah,
Yeah,
oh,
little did you know.
well, I feel honored, really. I think Alan and I met, and we chatted, and I already basically fell in love with the guy already since his Emmy speech. So,
Oh,
that
yeah.
was an easy meeting, really. And I thought, what he said was just so beautiful for all of us as actors, because it tells the world that what we do is important. And I think, to ask the parents to give the opportunity for your youngsters who happen to have an interest in writing or shooting a movie or something, give them the opportunity to at least try. So I really thank you, Alan. I appreciate that message.
Yes, thank you,
And,
Alan.
yeah, no, really fantastic. And then I read the script, and I was totally, bowled over by the script, because I was surprised that Alan wrote the script, because I don't know him that way. I mean, I knew him from Masters of None, all the comedies that he was doing, and I said, "Oh, what is this? This is killing me here." It was so dramatic, it was so kind of tied in emotionally. And then when I went in to read with Christine, for the chemistry read, I just thought, wow, I wasn't me. So I really felt all the emotions in the room. So I wasn't sure why that was. Now I know, Christine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was like, I was kind of like being moved by this kind of invisible force. Now that we're talking about it, the memory flushes back. I remember tearing up the room for the scene we were improvising, and I really felt that all the producers in the room were all kind of hushed in that whole kind of a moment, and I just sat back down. I felt drained, but I didn't understand why I was drained. She was sucking all the energy out of me. That's what. No, fantastic, really. I don't think I've ever done anything quite like it in a room in that setting. So thank you, Christine.
Yeah, thank you. No, I felt like Alan and the producers and casting, this was one of those scenarios where they really let us as actors just embody what was going on in the scene, and then they got out of our way. It was like this thing where like you didn't even know they were there. They were so quiet, and working with Alan, he let us do the scene so many times in so many different ways, and so it wasn't like this 5-minute thing where you get one shot, and it was like, you didn't get it, and or like you see their reactions or they're on their laptops. Like none of that was going on. There was so much respect on both sides, and I truly feel like that was the beginning of a wonderful kind of journey of what it was going to be like, and how much respect there was on every side and every department of this film.
And I think all other production can really emulate this kind of environment. First of all, the room was big enough for us to do stuff, not like a little box, you can't do anything. So really, not only you're giving the venue for the actors to be able to not feel restricted, but also give us the sense of freedom that we can explore. So
we could play.
It's a good method.
It felt like it felt like we were working on a play together. And we were kind of creating the scene. I mean, I don't know if that's for Alan.
Yeah, just to chime in very quickly, because I think you guys have described what happened, I think, pretty eloquently. But I'm a big believer in meeting people and just getting a measure of them as human beings, even before necessarily they've done an audition. It depends, obviously, case by case. But it really helped in this specific case. I met both of them in person and just sat down and we talked about stuff just in general. Don't even talk about the movie, just talk about who they are, what their story is, what their lives are like. All of that helps me. And then as far as that chemistry read goes, it was 100% like you said, which is just let us work with the scene and forget everything else. Don't worry about this being an audition. Don't worry even at a certain point. Look, I want to get the scripted version, but then let's just improvise. And I think part of that comes from probably my comedic background, where I wanted them to just feel what it was like to be these characters and give it some space. And then on top of that, improvising in both English and Mandarin. And that to me was a very meaningful experience, just watching that, because I hadn't done that before. And I hadn't seen a parent-daughter relationship sort of in that mode with two different languages, which is what my own personal experience was like. And so I knew from that, from that moment, we were pretty much sold. And that was essentially the only chemistry read we did. I think you remember these moments because you just felt so strongly. Like, I remember where I was when I watched Christine's first audition. Like, I was leaving the gym. I was leaving the Equinox on Sunset audition on my phone. And I saw it, and I called the casting director, Terry Taylor, who did a great job. And I was like, okay, this is, I just like, why would I remember that from 3 years ago? Just remember like, oh, this is it. And so the chemistry read only added to that, and added to the idea that there's a sort of ineffable feeling that you get. And that's what ultimately a movie is anyway. It's the feeling that you sort of create in the audience and in the viewer. It's sort of indescribable. So.
And I just want to talk about this entire cast because it is just flawless from top to bottom. And I know you actually went to Taiwan and had to cast some actors there, and they have a very different casting process, don't they? They don't really audition.
Yeah, very different. I flew over there and did what I do here, which is meet with actors, and that is actually more akin to their process anyway, where they have general meetings and they don't do these sort of cow call auditions where you come in and do 50 million sort of reads and whatever. I just met with a lot of people and tried to get their measure, and sort of after I established some level of rapport with each one, I might then segue into asking them to run a few lines with me. And it really made me laugh. I was texting Christine today about the audition that Hong-Chi Lee did, who plays the younger version of Ty's character. And it's in Chinese, but I did a Google Translate, and he talked about how horrible his audition was, because he came in and he read, and I was always interested in casting him because I'd seen tape on him. He came in and we had a great talk. I was super excited about him. We started doing the scene and he was horrible. I can say that because he said he was terrible at the audition, and I was stunned. I was like, I saw this guy in movies, like I've seen it. And I auditioned for an hour and a half, just worked with him and gave him time, right? And never got really that much better. I flew back to America. I sat in my office in the West Village and just sat there and was like, who do I cast? I love this guy. The idea of casting this guy, I think he can do it, but I just didn't know. And so I went with my gut and cast him. And it really paid off because he's magnificent in the movie. And the transition from that character, from him to Ty, is really one of the keys of the movie. And sometimes, you got to trust your instincts, and casting is not a science. It's very much an art. It's very much sort of a decision you make based on sometimes your emotions and your feelings, because it cannot be quantified.
Yeah, I mean, and he actually can say this because Hong-Chi is brilliant in this film. I mean, he carries the first half of this film, and I think something that Alan did so wonderfully is that he took so many chances on so many of us as cast. I mean, there's not huge box office names. I mean, other than Ty. Ty's like, he's the OG, but it's like, for an actor, you just want the chance to be able to work with the director and try to get somewhere. And so, even hearing the story, the fact that he worked with Hong-Chi for an hour and a half, and I know, later at the wrap party when we were in Taiwan, he told Alan that was his first audition ever. And it's like, had you not taken an hour and a half, maybe you would have never realized how wonderful he is, and he's not a big name in the States. And so we wouldn't have ever had this opportunity. And yet here we are. And I can't wait for the world to see him because, like you said, he's magnetic.
Mm-hmm. He's fantastic. He is such a discovery. And Ty, I'm kind of curious, since he's playing the younger you, although they're very different characters. We see him when, he's young and sort of optimistic, and you play the character at an older age. Did you guys even meet or communicate at all about playing the same character?
As a matter of fact, no, we didn't. And really, and I've said this, and this, question was asked of me before. and Alan is the sculptor. He needs to sculpt these two guys together as one, you see. And I think what he did was, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, that you found the most basic common denominator of these two people, you know, as one person. And that is the commitment to what they do. You know, he was very committed. I mean, the young Kingsley was very committed to life, right? And the older one is committed to raising a family. So that's the complete through line, you know, for me, that I felt that if we fulfill that basic common denominator of the old and the young, we're going to be able to bridge it, giving, you know, Alan's talent as a director.
Alan, who did you cast first? Was it Ty or Hong Chi Lee?
I think I cast Ty first. Yeah, I think I cast Ty first. I think we did a lot of our American casting first. And you know, quite frankly, a lot of the Taiwanese casting, it was a process. You know, we had to sort through a lot of videos and, like Christine said, take chances on people. You know, it's a different world there. You know, Hongxi after the wrap party was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry. Like, you know, thank me for casting me in the movie." And I was like, "You did a great job." He said, "I'm sorry, my audition was so bad." I was like, "No, it was good." He's like, "No, I was bad." And then he said, "Yeah, he never auditioned before." And I said, "How did you get your first movie?" He said, "I was walking down the street and some guy saw me and said, 'Man, you look cool. Like, do you want to be in a movie?'" I was like, "It's a very different world there. It is not really what happens here." So.
Man, that's so much better.
Yeah. I feel like I wish
our story was like that.
Yeah.
Like, we did a
but Christine, they would cast you, but they would never cast me down the street. They was like, forget him. You, yes. I mean, I would do the same. Say, okay, you want to be in a movie? Okay.
I wish that was my story. That was not. No. I drove for Uber and served many tables for years before slowly took the process. But you know, you live and you learn, and everybody's journey is so different. So yeah, you just need somebody to take a chance.
And I do think auditioning, I mean, I guess it's the best process we have, but it is such a foreign idea, and it doesn't, you know, you can be a great auditioner and maybe not a great actor, or vice versa. Just as actors, I'm curious, do you guys have any helpful hints for actors in the audition room?
That's
I just embrace it. I love the audition process. I don't know, maybe I'm one of the few, because I've always felt that audition is the only time, at least one time, I get to do exactly what I want to do. Because even when you don't get the job, of course, you don't get to do it, right? But if you do get the job, then, you know, you have scene partners, you have directors, you have everybody in the room that you really need to cooperate to make the scene work. But in an audition, all eyes are on you. You know, you're gonna, I mean, there's no divided attention any way, shape, or form. And what better is it when you, under those circumstances, to be an actor, to just, you know, be the focus in the room. So I like it. I don't mind it at all. And besides, it's going to be a way of life for me. So I accept the fact that that's way of life. So.
Wow, that's experience talking right there. I'm gonna take that, Ty, because I wish I wish I was a little bit more positive about it. But yeah, no, I think that is great advice for us actors, because auditioning can be really it can be hard, you know, and life gets in the way of auditioning. And so I think that's the hardest part, is that, you know, we prep so much and we get the email and it's like tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., you know, for this character that you have to work on, and you drop everything and then you get in there and you're ready to go. And for some reason, you know, maybe you got a parking ticket, maybe you just feel frazzled that day, and maybe you're waiting for an hour or something, and you go in and you don't get to do what you want. And then you get that, you know, like, the minute that you have in there, and then you feel defeated, and then you go home and you go do it all over again. So I'm saying the negative part of it, but the good part of it is that, you know, when you really do get to audition and people get to see your work and you get the job, you know that you did that. Like, you worked for that, and they know what they're getting when you step on that set. You know, it's less likelihood of you getting recast by that point because you've already gone through, you know, all the hurdles. But Joel Edgerton actually gave me an amazing piece of advice. This was actually, I picked him up while I was driving Uber. I didn't even know it was him.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it was insane. I actually really didn't know it was him. He was telling me about a movie he directed, and I thought he was talking about like a student film at USC. So I was like, all right. And he was talking about his movie, The Gift. And he told me that Peter Weir gave him a piece of advice, casting advice. And he was like, you know, when you're casting roles, it's kind of like solving a crime. And you're the detective, and all these people come in, you know, and like 90% of the people are kind of off and strange. And so you're like, maybe they could have done the crime. Then you got like 5% of the people that are like, no, definitely not. And then you have the other 5% that come in and they just have blood on their hands. And it doesn't matter kind of what they do, but they walk in and they feel like the character, and they are the character. And sometimes they're not necessarily the most prepared, but something about them makes it right. And that's who you're supposed to cast. But then he also said that he remembered every single actor that was prepared and worked really hard for the role. And then he goes through that Rolodex whenever he casts something else down the line. And so that just gave me a sense of freedom to do what I want and know that my work is going somewhere, and then letting it go when I leave the room. Because I know by that point, it's out of my control.
I've heard so many casting directors say you're not just auditioning for one part. When you come in, you're auditioning for so many future parts. And it's very reassuring to hear that.
Oh, it's absolutely true, because, you know, nothing goes to waste. You go into a room, you know, you do your work, you prepare, and I tell you, somewhere, and it happened to me a lot, really. Sometimes, oh, you know, Ty, it was great, but, you know, he wasn't really quite right for the role. I'm telling you, somewhere down the line, somebody said, you know what? Hey, remember that guy that came in, you know, last time? Let's bring him in, you know? So I think it's really good to know, you know, that really all your efforts, right, are your efforts, and they're never going to go to waste.
And Alan, from your perspective, I would love to know if there's anything that, if an actor is lucky enough to come in and meet with you or read with you, is there anything you would want them to know coming into that room?
Well, first of all, I want to say what they've been saying is 100% accurate in terms of, this isn't a sporting event, right? It's not a 100-meter dash, because it's not a winner and other people who aren't as good at that. It's everyone can do different things, and it's a subjective process. So you might be excellent, you might be an amazing actor, you just might not be right for that role. So come in and do your thing, and like Ty said, like Christine said, we'll remember. I'll always remember actually one thing that Mike Schur said, which is, you know, they had auditioned somebody a long time ago, and he just remembered that person. And I think later they did a small part on somebody, and he wrote down their name on a Post-it note and put it on his computer. And then when he was making Parks and Rec, he looked at it, and it was Nick Offerman, and he cast him as Ron Swanson. And I was like, this is a guy from years ago that, like, something about this guy is interesting. You know, it's just like that happens, and it is sort of a process where you just have to come in and do it every day. It's your job, and you need to be well prepared. And I do want to say something. I hope this is encouraging and not discouraging, but I will say, by that very same token, come in and be prepared and do the work and be excellent in every audition you do. But with many of these roles, it's a thin slicing. You watch the audition, and you know within seconds, first of all, whether the person is close to the world you want. I mean, because it's a feel, it's a look, it's a sound, it's everything put together. And so, you know, you're making that decision very quickly. And I mean that, again, sincerely as an encouragement, because it also means when you don't get a role, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad actor or you did a bad job. It's, you might not be right for this one, but there are going to be roles for you down the road if you're well prepared and you have any modicum of talent, which I hope you do. But that to me is like, you know, casting to me, as I mentioned, just a gut thing. As someone who's making decisions, you have to put, and also consider that you are one piece in a larger puzzle. You are one piece of a cast, and everything needs to fit together in the right way. So that's another consideration. You know, I have so much respect for people who are going in and auditioning all the time. It's a difficult process. I know it can be really, really tiring. It can be really, really frustrating, and you'll hear 99 no's before you hear a yes sometimes or more. And you know, you just got to keep going. And it's a game of perseverance and a game of sort of will at that point too.
I want to mention, because this movie, I mean, it spans decades, it spans continents. It's a very epic story, but I believe you were on a budget. And it looks so beautiful, but it's a huge undertaking for your debut feature. What ended up being the biggest challenge for you from a sort of a technical perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to shout out the team that made the movie, and that's obviously our producers at Macro, but also our crew and specifically Nigel Bluck and Amy Williams, our DP and production designer. Because when you say it looked fantastic, that is due in large part to their talents and their experience and their ability to push me and challenge me and also deliver on some of the crazy things I asked of them. So it's both, right? And Olga Mill as well, our costume designer, was so integral in designing some of those costumes, particularly not just limited to, but in the past sequences. You know, she designed some of those Taiwanese costumes, and that was a real undertaking because she was designing dresses and having seamstresses make them. You know, look, it's always a challenge when you're traveling to a different country, when you're doing period, and when you're doing all of that stuff. So it really takes everyone just pulling together. You do the research. You know, we worked off a lot of photography, and some from my own family and some from crew members' families, to recreate those apartments, to recreate, you know, a hut in the middle of the right field, to build that essentially from scratch. One of the scenes that I think people have been responding to is a scene where young Yuan and young Pinsui dance in what it looks like a quote cool small town bar / club. That was the lobby of a Holiday Inn. You know, that was an empty room, and that was, you know, it was some rundown hotel next to a major highway. And Amy turned that into that beautiful 1970s Taiwanese bar in the span of a week. And like you said, this was not, you know, Avengers 14. We did not have $400 million. We had considerably less than that. So it takes ingenuity, and it takes, you know, talented people just giving it their all and pulling all in the same direction. And so I'm really proud of how the movie looks. And I think that very same, you know, commitment to the quality also allows the actors to perform to the best of their ability, because they can look around and see, man, this looks like 1950s Taiwan, or this looks like 70s Bronx, or this looks like this character's apartment and she's throwing a party there, and it feels like, okay, it's not too up, it's not too down, there isn't too much Chinese decoration there, you know, it's not a parody of an Asian person's house. All of those things come into play, I think, when you know, an actor has to deliver and perform on the spot. So it's all kind of, you know, the same team kind of pulling in the same direction, as I said.
What about for you as actors? What ended up being the biggest challenge of playing these characters who, you know, are pretty much reserved for a large part of the film?
For me, I mean, I think, you know, because I was going through so many personal emotions, I found it actually really difficult to hold in my emotions in a lot of these scenes, because the way Alan wrote it is just, you know, it's like gut-wrenching. And so a lot of it was pulling back how I really was feeling in it. And I realized that a lot of the scenes that I did with Tai, you know, there was so much distance there, and there wasn't a lot of dialogue, that in order to really understand the distance, I kind of had to understand the love between them more. And that really helped me once I started working more with Tai, because I got to know him more as a person and started really looking at him in that like fatherly figure kind of way. And that, you know, he very much would protect me in scenes, and, you know, like he's like the dream kind of scene partner because he's just so good, you know? And so in that way, it made it easier for me to channel that kind of distance, because I could understand how much pain Angela was going through, that she doesn't have that relationship with him. So you know, all the quiet scenes are the hardest ones for me. I don't know about you, Tai.
The hardest scene was the reunion scene with Yuan and Pingsui. Well, first of all, I mean, the scene requires so much, and I was very fortunate that this is the third film that Jonah and I worked in, so that helped a lot. The fact that I have to speak all that Mandarin, whew, man, I tell you, I think Alan was having kittens, man. He's going like, okay, this guy gonna make it through the day, and the location was a little rough too. It was underneath the subway. And it was so noisy. It was a huge scene, right, Alan? It was like, there were like, 100 extras and people are running around, and we were on the second floor of some shopping mall. And there was traffic everywhere. And it was very difficult to focus. And I think also, given the fact that Joan knows the language so well, and there were things that didn't sound like a conversation because it was translated from English, right? So translation is an illusion. You really have to interpret certain things. And for us to do that was an obstacle, because on the day there were things that Joan said, we would never say it like that. And I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, man, because that's how I learned it. Now, and all that really, I mean, that was the most difficult and struggle, was such a real struggle for me. But we must still do it, I mean, we had to, because we only had that one day to do it. And it turned out okay, right?
I think if you watch that scene now, you're like, you couldn't tell. I mean, it's really quiet and beautiful. The sound guys did an amazing job digging all of the subway noises out of it. And he's not lying. Like, again, you're shooting in a restaurant, and this happens to be in real Chinatown because we wanted an authentic feel. And there were people downstairs just constantly coming in and yelling, and kids playing. And on top of all of obviously the scene itself is very emotional. It's a long scene. We had one day to shoot the whole scene. We had Joan for a day. I mean, all of these elements that's when you really have to sort of kind of band together and figure out, like he said, to muscle through it, because you don't get to go back. You don't get to go back. You had, and honestly, I have to sit down with the AD and the DP and figure out how to get our coverage so that we can make the day. And that's when you're not shooting 12 setups, because it's a 4-page scene, a 5-page scene, and you're just getting through it. And you wouldn't know it from watching it, because it's, one of the reasons I cast Ty was that he can do a lot with a little, and he can play things small. And that is an incredibly emotionally fraught and sort of, in some ways, tense scene, and it traverses territory from being really, really up at the top to being wistful to being, to having sort of this kind of the look of longing on his face at the end of it. All of those sort of beats have to be hit, and it's not easy, especially when there are barking dogs and sirens and subways and police officers coming in. I mean, all those things happen. So kudos to overcoming obstacles, which by the way happened throughout the film, but you wouldn't know it from watching it.
Mm-hmm. No, you wouldn't know it. Actually, I will say, I do have to add something. I went through the complete opposite experience for the restaurant scene, because we did that in reshoots, and Alan made sure that it was the most quiet set, because we had gone through so much that first go around, and like the extras were like, the background was so respectful, and it was such an emotional film, and I had plenty of time to get ready we did a rehearsal, and everything went well. And I remember Alan being like, we have all the time in the world, we're ready. I'm going to put 3 cameras on you at one time. So we're just going to capture it all. And all of it was set, and he called action, and I froze. I just completely froze. It was 7 a.m. It was our first scene up, and I thought I had it in me and I was ready to go. And something about that scene, and so that's just so crazy, because I always thought as an actor, if I had everything set, that it would be so easy. I had the best scene partner, I have the best director, and I couldn't do it out of nerves. And I remember Alan walking over to me, and he just looked at me, and he was just like, "You're fine. I know what you can do. We've worked together. I know you're a great actor. Just let it all go. We have lots of time. What do you need from me?" And I think that's so rare. Like, when do you ever hear that from a director? Usually it's like, we got to make the day. Like, you need to do your job and figure it out. And so I feel so lucky that I had that. And then I also had Ty sitting across from me. And I remember you like grabbed my hand, and you were like, "You're doing just fine. I'm here for you. What do you need?" And so now looking back, I'm like, wait a second, that was the hardest scene personally for me.
And by the way, she says that she says that she froze or that it took forever or whatever. It's like, that's a scene where she's incredibly emotional. It's the most emotional scene in the movie for any actor to play, really, in terms of openly emoting, you know, for a reason, because she's an American character and sort of more free with her emotions. But you know, she got to essentially exactly what we needed, from nothing to exactly what we needed, and openly crying. We didn't use any tricks. For those of you wondering, like, I've been in the business long enough. You can use tricks to cry. You can blow shit you can blow stuff in your eyes and use tears and whatever. We didn't do any of that stuff. She got from nothing to essentially the scene that's the one take that's in the movie in like 4 or 5 takes. It wasn't like it took all day. She's acting like she like couldn't do it. It's like, yeah.
It felt like hours though. Like as an actor, when you can't, you know,
I've seen actors
oh my God,
struggle to do that, to get the lines right. It's taken them way longer. So it wasn't like it took forever.
Before we go, I want to remind viewers you can find information about the COVID-19 Relief Fund in the comments, designed to help actors who are struggling right now, as I think a lot of people are. I'm just sort of curious for all of you who are sort of on lockdown right now, what's getting you through this time? Anything you're reading, watching? I should remind everyone that by the time this airs, TIGERTAIL will be available on Netflix, not Tiger King, TIGERTAIL. There's two fantastic tiger shows on, so look for this one.
I thought I had some downtime, but I didn't. I mean, it turned out that I was involved in this campaign called Wash the Hate, and there was a bulletin from the FBI saying that because of this pandemic, there will be a rise in hate crime against Asian Americans. And we really wanted to nip it at the bud. We want people to know, we want to rally the troops. We want support from the point of view that unity is the only way we're going to beat this pandemic. And so I ended up doing a lot of press. Not exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking about maybe doing some FaceTime with Alan, you know, call Christine and say hi or something. Man, there wasn't even a normal conversation that throughout this time. So that's what's been happening with me. So I haven't had a chance to see anything. So TIGERTAIL will be the first thing I'm going to see during this whole thing, you know, this whole social distancing thing.
Well, for me, you know, I will say, yes, we've been really lucky that we've been able to focus on some of the work that we're doing right now, and we're doing a little bit of press. It is a very strange time to be promoting a film, but what has been really nice and therapeutic is that it feels like the whole community, you know, Asian American actors, writers, directors, just people who love film, kind of coming together and really celebrating the fact that we're creating stuff. So that has been really nice. And I've just been cooking and eating a lot. So that's about it. And just talking to my actor friends and hoping that, you know, everything kind of goes back to normal after all of this is said and done.
Alan, for you?
I want to give a plug for a show called Dave on FX. It also starts just keep watching that. I would just go back and forth between TIGERTAIL and Dave and just get those numbers up for both those shows and movies.
Thank you for the shout out. We will take it.
I mean, we're recording this and just in a few hours the movie is going to drop on Netflix. You have to be excited.
Yeah, excited for people to see it. It's been enough press and talking about it. Let's have people see it and be able to enjoy it and watch it and talk about it.
Well, I can't wait for people to see it. I told my mom it came out last week, and so she's been angry at me because she thought she watched it last week. And she'll finally be able to see it tomorrow. I want to thank you guys for such a beautiful movie. Thank you so much for joining us today. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenelle.
Thank you so much for having us.